Welcome to the Diabetes Podcast, where real stories meet real science, helping you take charge, not just take medicine. Imagine you're tired all the time. You're thirsty, hungry, gaining weight, and you don't know why. Then one day, your doctor says, your blood sugar's high, and everything in your world stops. You think, diabetes? Me? But here's what no one tells you. That first moment, that first symptom, is also your first chance to turn it all around. On the Diabetes Podcast, we help people take those first frightening symptoms and walk them all the way to remission. Today, we'll talk about those early signs, what they actually mean, the emotions that come with diagnosis, and the science of getting your life back. Because diabetes isn't your destiny, it's your wake-up call for healing. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, before we get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the audience to please subscribe to the podcast if they haven't done so already. It really helps us to get this podcast out to the approximately 46 million Americans that need to know that there is hope in defeating this disease. Additionally, if any of the listeners are interested in a weekly email with summaries of the podcast, you can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll have that link down below if you want to sign up. Amber, today we're talking about something that affects millions of people just in the United States. The first signs of type 2 diabetes. These are those subtle symptoms that sneak up long before an official diagnosis.
Yes, and we're not just going to list the symptoms. We're going to talk about what they mean. We're going to really look at what's happening inside your body and how this moment, the early stage, can actually be the biggest opportunity for remission. So if you've noticed these signs, which are fatigue, thirst, blurry vision, weight gain, or just feeling that something is off, like just not feeling like yourself, consider this episode your wake-up call. If you've ever wondered, geez, I just feel so tired. Why do I feel so tired? Why can't I lose weight? Why do I get so thirsty or hungry all the time? Or why did my doctor just tell me I have diabetes when I don't even feel sick at all? Like I feel the same. We'll walk through how most people are diagnosed, the emotional roller coaster that follows, and then we're going to introduce something I call the Empowered Diabetes Remission Algorithm, which is a clear 5-step framework that gives you control right from those first symptoms.
Amber, I think a lot of people, at least from my understanding, first notice stuff like fatigue, maybe brain fog, but they don't necessarily connect that to diabetes.
Yeah, most people describe it as just being tired all the time. And the biggest one that I hear is probably, this is just part of getting older.
Yeah, I feel that now.
Well, what's really happening, or one thing that can be happening, is that your cells are starving for energy, even though you're eating.
So what do you mean by starving?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive for me to say that you've eaten, yet you're not getting that energy. So when insulin resistance develops, your cells stop responding properly to insulin. So we've talked a couple of times about the job of insulin is to unlock the door so glucose, or the sugar from the food that you eat, can move from inside your bloodstream to inside your body's cells where they can produce energy. But when that key doesn't work anymore, it doesn't fit the lock appropriately, the lock is all gummed up, sugar can stay in the bloodstream and your cells are left depleted.
Despite the fact that energy's going in my mouth, it's not really getting to the cellular level. It's not really getting where it needs to be.
Yeah. And that's where that fatigue, hunger, fogginess, that's where it's coming from, because they're eating, but they're just not getting that fuel and that extra sugar that's not getting inside the cell, but is in the bloodstream. That extra sugar floating there is pulling water from your tissues, which is why people could start urinating more and, getting really dry lips and mouth and feeling dehydrated.
This is why symptoms like thirst, fatigue, blurry vision, these aren't random. This is kind of the your body's way of telling you that something's wrong. We're not getting what we need.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You get too much sugar in the fluid inside your eye, and it makes it can make your vision blurry if you have high sugars. So it's not about too much sugar in your diet. A lot of people think that diabetes is a sugar problem and they cut out all carbs, that sugar problem is fixed. But it is more that your metabolism has lost its rhythm. But we're here to offer hope in the very beautiful idea that rhythm absolutely can be restored.
I think that concept that this can get better. We lead with diabetes remission. I don't think that's a common phrase. That's not something that enough, certainly general practitioners, are talking about. The idea that diabetes is not a one-way street. This thing can get better.
Absolutely.
So, type 2 diabetes, I should say.
Right. Yes. Because a lot of people think it's permanent, and that is a myth that I really want to shatter. Like if nothing else, if you take nothing else from this podcast, I want you to take that this is not a permanent condition, and it's a myth that is permanent. If you act early with the right guidance, you can absolutely reverse the metabolic dysfunction and achieve remission from type 2 diabetes.
Okay. So how do most people even find out they have type 2 diabetes?
It's usually by accident. Many people maybe they could go to their doctor for something unrelated, like fatigue or just feeling something's off. So they go get a checkup, and their labs may show elevated fasting blood sugar or an A1C that's over 6.5. It could be true that they go to the ER with an infection or blurry vision, as you said, or just not feeling well. And then they get the blood work, and sometimes it's really shocking. Like some people say that they never had diabetes, and then they have an A1C that's 12. Now that's usually in the type 1 space, but it can also happen at times in type 2.
So this isn't like just a switch, like I fell down and got diabetes. This has probably been in the works for a little bit.
Yes. Okay. Insulin resistance is in development in a bad way for 5 to 10 years before a diagnosis. And the microvascular, that's the small vessels in your body, can begin to have damage 6 years prior to type 2 diabetes diagnosis. And that's why these early symptoms that you feel, fatigue, food cravings, gaining weight, frequent urination, these are really key cues. They are warning lights up on the dashboard. If your body's a vehicle, these are the warning lights.
So I think some people, when they see the check engine light, are rushing down to the service station to get their stuff checked on. And I know I've been guilty in the past. Sometimes that's just a new feature of my car. I've got this little yellow light saying that something's amiss.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting thing, because if you have a check engine light on your car, you don't ignore it. You take it straight in, and it's always been so curious why, if that light came on in your car, you're freaked out, you're taking it in immediately. But with our bodies, it can be more gradual. It can be kind of okay until it isn't, and then you're okay again. You're like, well, I guess it just fixed itself. And so we power through. And on top of that, the healthcare system doesn't make it easy. There's usually no early intervention plan. You get your diagnosis, and then the focus immediately becomes medication. Maybe somebody says diet and exercise, but no one says, hey, here's how you can put this diagnosis you just got into remission. I've never heard anyone who gets diagnosed and immediately, here's your remission plan.
Yeah. And I think that's where the diabetes podcast is different, is that we are very type 2 diabetes remission is front and center. That is what we're all about. That is in general what we're trying to frame everything around. Exactly.
Like the mission has always been to give people a real plan, not a prescription, but a pathway that is medically sound, nutrition based, like solid nutrition based, science based nutrition practices, and supported by a team that truly understands every phase of diabetes and also the care that would normally happen in the U.S. healthcare system.
Okay, so just a little bit of context. I know that you've been in this game for over 20 years now.
Game is an interesting word.
You have worked specifically in diabetes care for over 20 years. You have worked with, at this point, thousands of people across the whole spectrum of this diabetes journey. What does that first diagnosis feel like? What's that first conversation sound like for somebody that's newly diagnosed?
Well, the most common emotion that comes up is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of complications, fear of that one or just two people in their life that they know that something horrible happened to them because of diabetes, and a fear of failure, especially as they go to doctor's appointments and more medications get added. So it's a little bit not really right at diagnosis, but right behind that fear is shame, a feeling that I did this to myself. I know what to do and I'm not doing it, or I'm not good enough, all of these things. And the unfortunate thing about that is that shame serves no purpose, and it often turns into paralysis where people freeze, or what is almost always the case, almost always, but I would say the majority of the time, people go into denial. The easiest way to deal with it is just deny that it's really good. I feel fine. I feel the same. Deny.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say something along the lines of, "This is my life now." You know,
yes.
I guess I'm just going to take the medication, or that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I get it. Like, the messaging around diabetes is often discouraging. People are told it's a progressive disease, because it is. You'll get more meds. You'll need more meds to take care of it as it goes along. You can't reverse it. But the truth is, those symptoms, fatigue, hunger, cravings, all of those symptoms are reversible. They are just signals from your body right now. They're not life sentences.
So instead of fear, I think we would say that a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is an opportunity for change, right?
Absolutely.
It's a turning point in your life, and you get to choose, does it get worse or does it get better?
Absolutely. And I think that's really at the root of what we're trying to say here, is that this is an opportunity for choice. If you stay in shame, and if everything that you're told is that it's a progressive disease, it's going to get worse, there's nothing you can do about it, that shuts people down into this shame spiral, and you don't feel like you're in choice. And when people lose the freedom of choice, they lose hope and give up. And that's how this disease takes a hold of people and drowns them. I would say figuratively, but it drowns them in high sugars, literally, maybe. So what we really want to do is show people step by step how to take that diagnosis and turn it into a plan for remission. Because a lot of people are like, but how? Just tell me what to eat. And it is not, unfortunately, that simple. That's part of it, but it's not that simple.
Something you mentioned earlier was the diabetes remission algorithm. And This is kind of new. I don't think that if you were to right now go out and search on Google, you're not going to see a lot for diabetes remission algorithm. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it is my simplified evidence-based roadmap to help people move from diagnosis to remission. Not a crash diet, not a supplement regimen, but a stepwise process that restores metabolic health and helps people safely reduce or even eliminate medications in a very, like, it's just like how to take it and math it, you know?
So I think for a lot of people with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, they're going to put on medication, most likely metformin, and then they're going to go get their numbers checked. And if they're normal, those numbers probably are not moving in the right direction. And they're probably going to get some more medication. And it tends to be just numbers get worse, get more meds, or the doctor adds another medication on top of that. I think we can say pretty confidently that a medication-only solution does not work. How is the remission algorithm different than that?
Yeah, what you just spoke about was a system that's built around medication management, meaning as your blood sugars rise, the A1C is staying the same or going up. So you go to the physician, you get another pill or eventually insulin. And we do talk about early insulin intervention as being a good strategy, but really it's a strategy for scaffolding. It's a strategy to support things while in the meantime you work on remission strategies. So what we do inside this podcast, we really try to help people see and flip that entire approach. Instead of just managing the symptoms, we focus on restoring the system. We look at what is driving the blood sugars to be high, which is typically insulin resistance, overactive glucagon, liver fat, inflammation, a whole host of things. We have the 12 core defects that we've covered in the past. And using nutrition, movement, behavior science, mindset to correct those root causes. So rather than a medication escalation plan, this is a metabolic restoration plan. It's about taking control of your physiology and not just covering it up with more medications.
Okay. So this sounds like a path forward or a path to healing. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the algorithm. How does it start?
Okay. Everything starts with awareness because, as we talked about shame and denial being so huge, you have to take that denial and turn it around and look at it, like really be aware of what is going on and be aware that diabetes is not just high blood sugar. It's about symptoms that we can measure, but it's really not too much sugar. It is a breakdown in how the body's systems are talking to one another.
So what we have here is a failure to communicate.
I see what you did there. Yeah, it's a team where everybody just stopped communicating and stopped listening to other parts of it, or completely misinterpreting what the other parts are saying. Your muscle cells, liver, pancreas, gut, brain, they're all tissue systems that are supposed to work together to manage all of your body systems, including blood glucose. But in type 2 diabetes, that communication is failing. It starts to fail, and then it's like really failing by the time of diagnosis. It often begins with insulin resistance in the muscle and liver. Your body is not responding properly to insulin's signal. So the pancreas tries to compensate by pumping out more insulin, but over time it just does not have the ability to keep up. And then the alpha cells in the pancreas start releasing too much glucagon, which raises blood sugar even further.
So this isn't just my pancreas is misbehaving. This is kind of happening all over the place.
Yeah, it's not just one organ that's taking a dump or doing its own thing. It's like, I think of like the old Sesame Street, like one of these kids is doing its own thing. It's not that. It is, this is
all of the kids are doing their own
all of
thing.
them. It's a full body coordination issue. And that is why we have the 12 episodes. And I know some of it is really kind of dry, very physiologic, medical material, but at the end there's all steps that you can do, steps that you can take to work on that core defect, because there is just not one cause. And I'm going to take a minute to give props to Dr. DeFranzo, because he is the one that coined the Dirty Dozen and really talked about the 12 core defects of type 2 diabetes. And he and many
gave us
others
a really
have
awesome framework for starting the podcast in the first place. So,
yeah, it was a good muse for the beginning of all this. But while insulin resistance might light that first match, but then we're seeing changes in the gut microbiome. We're seeing the kidneys reabsorb too much glucose. The brain is misreading hunger and satiety cues, and even changes in how fat cells release hormones.
Like with all this stuff kind of going on at the same time, I think this really kind of speaks to why something I've very often seen in a lot of social media applications is just do this one thing.
Oh my gosh.
Or try just try this one fix.
Drives me crazy.
There's no one fix that's going to be successful at a 12-prong attack on your body's systems.
Right. So step one, awareness, is about understanding that diabetes is not a personal failure. It is a complex, multi-system condition. So those same systems that went off track, this is so powerful. Those can be brought back into balance. And that's what remission really is. It's not curing diabetes, but it is restoring communication inside the body. And you could, if you wanted to say it's curing diabetes, you could use that terminology, but it is really restoring the communication that is broken within the body.
Yeah, I think without having a really good understanding of what diabetes is and the 12 dysfunctions associated with type 2 diabetes, it's real easy to just blame it on, I just can't process sugar anymore, when really it's my body's systems don't work in harmony. To use a football analogy, we're no longer doing huddles. We just go to the line and everybody runs in every direction. And man, we can't convert on third down to save our life. The systems are designed to complement each other, not to work. Very often, like particularly in the case of the liver, that hepatic glucose, it's actually working directly against what the other organs are trying to do.
Yeah, and the reason it's doing that is that the cells are starving. And so the liver is like, oh, you're hungry? Here's more sugar. But again, the communication, the bloodstream is not saying, hey, but we've got plenty of sugar here in the bloodstream. It's the problem with getting it in the cell. So the pancreas is like, oh, okay, we'll put out more insulin. Yeah, it is a big problem. And it's a big problem that so many entities are trying to capitalize on the desperate nature of a new diagnosis as smack you in the face. I just think of like WWE, the SmackDown, like something as detrimental as a diabetes diagnosis can be. Oh, just do this one thing. Stop eating these bananas. Like what? Okay. I won't get on that soapbox, but yeah, we need to start focusing on restoring function through a multi-pronged effect, not chasing this supplement rabbit hole.
So we talked about step one is awareness. What's step two?
Audit.
That doesn't sound like any fun. Did like let's maybe we can come up with a better name. I can't think of any fun audit that I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have just thrown out the word audit without more of a description. But okay, maybe kicking this disease in the butt is fun, and the audit will help you do that.
It's a fun audit.
It's a fun audit.
Yeah.
So this is where we gather data like food patterns, blood sugar, like looking at what the blood sugar is doing, medications, sleep, stress, movement. It's like detective work. You know, we teach clients to connect the cause with the effect. Like if you skip breakfast, what happens to the blood sugar and the energy? And it's funny because some people are like, I didn't eat anything, but the blood sugar went up. So really understanding the liver's role in that and why that happens can help with when you have a snack or when you give or take medicines if you need to do that. So it might be like when I eat late at night, what does my morning glucose look like? Or if I don't eat at night, what does the morning glucose look like? When you start noticing patterns from that, you can finally take really targeted action instead of just guessing at what you're doing.
So it's kind of a shift from when I eat carbs, my blood sugar goes up to when I eat this specific food in this quantity, I can expect my blood sugar to go up by X. Really drilling down on accurate prediction of how the food is going to affect my body.
Yes, to a point, because there are 42 factors that affect blood sugar, but it like I said, it is.
You said 42?
42 factors that affect blood sugar. Yes. And that's why no one thing is going to fix it. So that is why expert guidance really matters. Like if you're working with a nutrition expert who understands diabetes medicines, insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, you're getting the full picture and not just random advice from somebody who says, "Oh, I have whatever." They're just trying to peddle something. To be kind.
Yeah. We brought up in previous episodes this kind of idea of metabolic warfare, right? Mm-hmm. This intentional shift in thinking from I'm just going to win the battle at this one meal to I'm going to win a war against a perpetual chronic disease.
Oh yeah.
So rather than audit, which again to me sounds like accounting. I'm sure accountants may like it, but if you're not an accountant, I don't know that anyone's going to get really excited about audit.
Maybe that's the problem. I got an A in accounting. I know that you might find that hard to believe, but I did.
Well, I would to tie it back to metabolic warfare.
Yeah, stay on track.
I would prefer. Like this is the intelligence phase, right? This is where I'm gathering intelligence about an enemy, the enemy as it relates to type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to. I just want to add, like, I don't like that word enemy when it pertains to people, but
right.
Man, I love it when we're talking about diabetes. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, we're real big on. I'm not a diabetic. That's an identity statement, yep. And identity typically doesn't change. But if I have a disease, well, that's kind of like an unwelcome tenant who can be evicted.
It is absolutely in the
case of an enemy, there's somebody occupying a space, in this case my body, that doesn't belong there, and they're not going to leave unless I kick them out. So before you can develop a successful mission plan, you have to know about your enemy. You have to know if it's type 2 diabetes, what does type 2 diabetes like? What is it not like? What environments make it stronger? What environments make it weaker? Are there actual quantifiable numbers that I can track related to what is going on inside my body? And are those numbers going to enable me to engage this enemy from a place of overwhelming power as opposed to hamstrung from go because I'm unintentionally doing things to support this disease.
Love it. Yes.
So once someone understands what's going on inside their body, once somebody has done the audit or has gathered the intelligence,
Intelligence gathering.
Yeah. What comes next?
Action. My favorite step. My absolute favorite step, where awareness turns into movement. This is the point where you stop fighting your blood sugar and start training your body to use glucose efficiently again.
And I would say from a metabolic warfare standpoint, this is the execution phase of the plan.
Yeah.
We've learned about our enemy, we've come up with a mission, and now we're actually doing the thing to punch the enemy in the mouth. So this is where
definitely my favorite part.
Food and activity.
Sorry.
Never a dull moment around here. This is where the changes. We start doing things differently to start to create an environment that is crippling to type 2 diabetes.
Absolutely. And it's getting away from that diet and exercise way of thinking, which that's true, diet and exercise in a very general, vague sense. But I want people to think cellular repair. Every choice you make, the food, okay, I'll say it again. Twist my arm. Normally you say that again. I think it's worth repeating. I want people to think cellular repair.
Well, you meant, just to kind of throw back to earlier in the episode, you talked about it. The energy's getting in my body. I mean, it's not like you're starving yourself. You might, but that's not effective either. Most of the time I'm eating enough calories. They're just not helping. They're not creating energy in my body. They're disproportionately being stored as fat as opposed to utilized effectively. So what we have in diabetes is a cellular level problem.
Absolutely.
This isn't like, a blockage in one of my blood vessels that, will show up on some sort of scan, and a doctor can go in, they can cut this kind of stuff out. This isn't a cellular mass like you'd have in like tumors that's going to show up on like an MRI or something like that. This is happening everywhere in your body at the cellular level. If someone's to say, point to your diabetes, point everywhere, because it's happening everywhere. There's no effective single tool or medication to help get energy into every cell in your body.
Yeah. And one interesting thing you said is that one medication, at best, your GLP-1 receptor agonist might work on 6 of the 12 core defects, but it doesn't work on all 12. Yeah. And that's what it's about. Like, we need to get all of those 12 systems back in alignment. So let me connect the dots on that, because I think that'll help really understand like what exactly we're talking about for those who, especially those who have not listened to the 12 core defects podcast. We're talking about.
And kind of just from an admin standpoint, to help folks out, we'll put links in the show notes for all of those episodes if you need to go back and get a refresher, because there is a
there's a lot behind all these dots that I'm going to connect. Yes. So you've got muscle insulin resistance. So every time you engage your really large muscle movers, your glutes, your quads, those big ones, like walking after meals can do that, resistance training, riding a bike, squats, that movement opens up the glucose transporters. So even without insulin's help, it can help get sugar inside the cells where it's needed. Then there's liver insulin resistance, and this calms down when meals are spaced appropriately, when alcohol and late night snacking are reduced, and when overall calorie balance shifts more towards foods with a high nutrient density. Alpha cell dysfunction is another dot to connect. That is excess glucagon release, which responds to more stable glucose levels. When your meals have enough fiber and protein, your liver stops getting that false alarm to release sugar inappropriately. Then there's gut microbiome imbalance. And this is really helped by soluble fibers, beans, vegetables, especially non-starchy vegetables, which would be like every vegetable minus beans, peas, corn, potatoes. But still, beans, peas, corn, potatoes are very helpful. Fermented foods, those nourish the good bacteria that reduce inflammation and improve the signaling of insulin. Then brain and appetite center misfires are quieted when your blood sugar is more steady. And this helps stop craving constant hits of refined carbs because your brain finally feels like it's getting the fuel that it needs again.
So if I can kind of read between the lines, it's not really about like restriction, right?
No, it's
Typically,
not.
if we talk about diet and exercise, it sounds a lot to me like, crap, I don't get to eat the things that I want to eat anymore. Really what we're talking about,
thought.
yeah, getting the communication between the multiple systems in your body that are affected by diabetes, so that your body actually listens and responds appropriately to the food that you're putting in your mouth. And I just keep going back to that word diet. I think in order to be successful here, there's a real need to shift from that scarcity mindset surrounding food. Diet means I don't get to eat what I want. We got to shift that to I'm no longer going to supply diabetes with the resources it needs to survive. Right? It's less about I'm going to personally sacrifice and more about I'm not going to aid and abet the enemy that is occupying my body against my will. That is a warrior's mindset, and it is absolutely necessary to, I don't want to be doing this, but diabetes doesn't like it even more. And just the fact that I know that every time, we're big beans fans on this podcast. Every time I get that soluble fiber in there, I'm going to increase my body's natural GLP-1 release. That's going to lead to that satiety. That's going to, I'm going to feel full. And diabetes hates fiber. Really, really hates it. So, even if it's not something I would necessarily actively pursue on my own, I know that every time I'm sticking it to this jerk that's occupying my body and doesn't need to be there.
Well said. And it's not about having enough willpower. It's not about punishment or being perfect. It's about designing meals that balance carbohydrate quality, protein adequacy, and fiber density, like you were mentioning with the beans. So, your breakfast might be oats with chia seeds and berries for fiber and nutrients. Your lunch might be beans, veggies, tofu for plant protein and gut health. It is really about getting foods that are going to help increase insulin sensitivity and increase satiety, or that feeling of fullness. And for movement, the goal is not to go run a marathon. It's not about training for some ultra distance thing. It's about consistency, consistently walking after dinner, consistently doing some kind of strength work 2 to 3 times a week, like even 10-minute bouts, 5 or 10-minute bouts to really spread throughout the day, make a difference. And we're talking about small habits, small decisions that turn your body's ability to clear glucose and store it properly, like turning on your ability to do those things. That is remission physiology in action.
And as long as we're talking lifestyle changes, sleep and stress management are going to be in there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got elevated cortisol from chronic stress, which can keep your blood sugar high and block the signaling of insulin, which is incredibly important. And deep sleep, On the opposite end of that spectrum, deep sleep can restore hormonal balance. So action is not, as you just so eloquently pointed out, action is not just about food and movement. It's building in recovery and building in calm to your daily routine.
And this is really the qualitative versus the quantitative stuff, right? Not the what is my blood sugar number in this moment, but what is my energy, my mood, my motivation, the stuff that can't be placed on a scale of 1 to 100 or something like that.
Yeah, when you start acting on these type systems, the results are going to show up fast, not just on your finger stick blood sugar monitor or your continuous glucose monitor, but in how you feel within yourself, how you feel in your skin, your energy, your confidence. And that's the turning point. When people see their value and know that they are worth it. And it's interesting. I've seen people on both ends of the spectrum, people who are like, absolutely, this is not gonna win. And that's the mindset that it takes. Those are the people that hit the ground running, versus some people are just so defeated that you have to work on self-value and worth first, and getting rid of the shame first for them to step into that empowered mindset. When people really realize that remission is not about willpower, it's about getting your biology to cooperate again. That is really what we're talking about.
So we've talked about awareness, we've talked about audit, and we've talked about action. When somebody has taken action and they're successfully they're showing up to the gym every week, if that's your thing, how do they not fall into that trap? How do they not just fall victim to attrition like literally more than 90% of people will?
Absolutely. And that's where accountability, the fourth step, comes in. Our metabolism is influenced by so many variables: hormones, stress, sleep, food environment, the economic environment. And no one can juggle all of those factors all alone forever. Yeah.
We've talked about how this isn't a switch that just turned on one day and all of a sudden you've got diabetes. This is a multiple year and potentially multiple decade slope that leads to this ultimate diagnosis of type 2.
Mm-hmm. And reversing it is going to take repetition, reinforcement, refinement. And to be clear, accountability is not about guilt. Like, oh, why didn't you do what you said you were going to do? No, I am not, never have been the food police. I believe that the only person that you're hurting is yourself. So it's about diving into the why behind it, what's subconsciously going on. It's about feedback. What is the belief, mindset, heart set about what that person is experiencing. And when people check in with someone who has experience in this and really knows the data behind the continuous glucose monitor, what the meds are really acting on, and the side effects that could also be coming along with those, when the nutrition plan is signed off and agreed upon by all parties, and you have someone who can interpret patterns instead of just pointing out problems. You're like, oh, there's your problem right there. Just fix that. That's not a pathway to success, pointing out flaws or breaking people down. It is about community buy-in, about what can we do about it? What are you willing to do? What do we think the biggest bang for your buck is going to be in terms of change? And that's what really helps people stay in the game for life, because if all things go well, you're going to age. That's the goal, to make it another year older, because if you don't, that means you've passed on, and that's so you want to age. And the biggest risk factor for type 2 diabetes is age. So you've got to have your head in the game. You've got to be fully committed to a remission mindset and game plan.
Yeah, and I think that's where the diabetes podcast model is different from just a quarterly doctor's visit.
Absolutely.
Every single week we release an episode. Every single week at the end of that episode, there is kind of an action statement. There's a usually very small,
There's
very modest.
absolutely an action statement. Mm-hmm.
But the expectation is, as much as I like listening to Amber's voice, like the reason we do this is if you take on the habit changes, if you actually do the things that we talk about every single week, you will start to heal. Like, we're not hoarding information over here. Every single week is a new thing. Every single week is a new opportunity to integrate a small change that over time and at scale creates an environment in your body that is hostile to type 2 diabetes.
Yep. And I think, doctors are going to diagnose, they're going to prescribe. Those things are vital, but they just don't have the time to coach through everyday decisions. In fact, I was listening to a physician who got her degree in nutrition, was going to be a dietitian, and realized the salary for dietitians is not, it's really atrocious. I can attest to that. And then went on to become a physician, but then through her training as a physician was mostly trained on the medication that matches and fits the disease, and did not in her clinical practice have the time to coach people through the everyday decisions. Like when you're seeing 22 to 28 patients a day, there is absolutely no time to tailor a nutrition and diet and exercise plan for a person and have adequate follow-up and accountability and all of those things. And so this podcast is an answer to that gap that exists, the gap that I've seen exist for 22 or so years. And even before I did this as a profession, I saw a gap there. I couldn't quite name it, put my finger on it, but we really combine clinical accuracy with behavior coaching, and people learn how to respond when their blood sugar spikes after a restaurant meal, and they learn how to adjust breakfast if they're starting a new exercise and need to fuel their body differently.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, I think it's kind of like having a navigator in the passenger seat, for lack of a better description. Mm-hmm. It's not just the GPS telling you kind of recalculating,
rerouting. And meanwhile, you're exactly. Like, do I keep going straight? Do I go over here?
Yeah. Or to kind of take it back to that warrior mindset, do you want to be a planner or an executor? So some people really geek out on, optimizing the numbers and making sure they've got an exactly amount of, macros and all that other kind of stuff.
That would be you.
Yeah. But I can tell you, I think most people just want to do the dang thing.
That would be me.
What's the mission today? So I can go wreck some bad guys. What is diabetes afraid of? What is diabetes worst case scenario today? And let's go do that.
Hear, hear. Yes. We want to turn that accountability into not just information, because there is no lack of information out there. We're talking about taking information and turning it into transformation, because without it, people drift back, entropy. People are going to drift back to habits that recreate the defects, elevated glucagon, chronic stress hormones, mitochondrial fatigue. But with it, they keep those systems talking to each other and in harmony.
Yeah. So what comes after accountability?
Adaptation. So adaptation is where maintenance becomes mastery. Because
and really, I think this is where the conversation typically with the physician and the continual rollout of more medication breaks down. If there's a long-term failure of why the disease does not get better, it's no adaptation.
Right.
We know for a fact that just continuing to increase the medication does not heal.
Yep.
And we just keep doing it anyway. because that's norm, and that's really the only tool that the physician has in 20 minutes of FaceTime with you, they can write a script and that's it. And that doesn't mean that they don't care for you. That doesn't mean that physicians are bad guys. I think that's almost uniformly false.
Absolutely.
But the system, the status quo does not work. The status quo is broken and nobody's going to change the system. It's far more easy for you to change your behaviors than to expect the system to realize, oh, we're not doing the patient a favor. We need to change things because the system's not set up for that.
Yeah.
That feedback mechanism does not exist.
Yeah. And I think so much of the system completely ignores the fact that type 2 diabetes is a dynamic condition, and so is remission. So as your glucose normalizes, medications decrease, and that requires your physician buy-in. You don't want to just cold turkey stuff. You need to talk to them about getting your plan to get off of medications. And as your metabolism strengthens, your plan should evolve right along with it. Like I see so many people change their nutrition and the sodium that they get in their diet, but without the change in the blood pressure medicine, they're standing up and almost passing out. Like you've got to change the medication and decrease it as you make these metabolic changes because your body's kicking in and doing what it needs to do.
Yeah. And I'll take it a step further to encourage your body to continue to adapt in the direction that you want it to. That lifestyle plan, that diet and exercise plan is going to need to continue to evolve and progress.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The metabolic state that is type 2 diabetes will adapt, and you have to be aggressive as far as continuing to do things that are going to make it just not survive.
Yeah, because if you need intense repair right away, you've got to get that intense repair right away. And then you want to get into a more maintenance phase. You want to make sure your muscles are stronger. Are they needing more fuel? Has your liver fat decreased? And that is improving fasting glucose. Is your sleep quality better? So the cortisol and the insulin resistance are down. And then you can start expanding and making sure you're getting variety in your food, that you're taking advantage of all of the phytochemicals of food, and really get to reintroduce flexibility so that it is for long-term enjoyment. Yeah, adaptation is what's going to keep remission sustainable. Like if you think of those 12 core defects that are going on in type 2 diabetes, if you think of each defect as a lever, adaptation means learning to sense when one of those things is drifting out of range and gently bringing it back in.
So remission isn't, yay, I did the things and my numbers are good now, I'm fine, right? It's really a lifestyle. It's almost
Absolutely.
a skill set.
Yeah.
It's every day I know what diabetes hates, and every day I do what diabetes hates.
Yes, using those skill sets to take your life back, the energy to move, the confidence to travel, the joy of eating things that you want to eat with purpose and without anxiety. That's what makes it all worth it. That's what life is about, being able to live.
All right, so to recap, we've got awareness, audit, which I'm not crazy about.
Yeah, but it's an A word, so we have.
It is. It is.
I like A words.
Action, accountability, adaptation. All of those are A words, actually, now that I think about it. Amber.
Yep.
Yeah. It's all right. Some of my favorite words start with the letter A.
Yeah. Yes, I have watched hundreds of people reclaim their health. So if you're listening and you've just been diagnosed, or you're seeing the early signs, there is hope. Like I want to make sure we offer a message of hope, but it's not hope for the sake of just hope and a prayer and toss caution to the wind. Like it is drawing a line in the sand. This is not your future. This is not a diagnosis that you want to be associated with, and doing something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really like about this episode is that we've taken something that's kind of scary, right? Nobody Nobody looks forward to the call from their physician or from their physician's office that says, hey, your blood work came back.
You can't even have a conversation.
And your numbers are this, which you don't know what that means. And we've just written you a prescription for this, which I guess I'm going to fill.
And then get horrible diarrhea and stop taking. And then, then you're not going back anymore. How dare they?
So we've taken that and kind of reframed that. We've turned this into a roadmap. We really want to hammer home, not just in this episode, but every episode, that this diagnosis is an opportunity to start a chapter of your life that is defined by increasing health. That's not normal. You know, in our nation, there's kind of just
normalize it. We're determined.
There's just this acceptance that I'm going to get old and sick.
This is my life
now. You will get old, but you don't have to get sick. You can do things. You can control a great deal of your outcomes intentionally, but it is a choice that you're going to make every day.
Yep. That's exactly what I want people to hear. If you've just been diagnosed or you've been told you're borderline, like there is no such thing as borderline pregnant, I want you to know this: you are not broken. You're just simply a little out of sync, and your body.
The check engine light is on. The vehicle's still drivable, but service needs to happen soon because you don't know when that engine's going to blow up.
Exactly. If you pay attention, awareness, take audit, take action.
Yeah. And when we say blow up, really we're talking about your kidneys, your eyesight, your lower appendages as it relates to diabetes are all in imminent danger. If it's gotten to you're actually diagnosed with type 2, the time to act is now.
So, I've worked in hospitals, endocrinology clinics with insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors. I've seen the full spectrum of diabetes. I've seen people in dialysis clinics. I've seen people lose feet, lower limbs, upper limbs, fingers, toes, all of the things, their kidney function, their eyesight. And I've also seen people completely turn this thing around before it even begins. So seeing that full spectrum, when I say that remission is possible, I don't mean that maybe. And to be clear, if you have absolutely no functioning pancreatic beta cells, maybe not.
Yeah.
But most people, you don't need a lot of functioning pancreatic beta cells to reduce insulin resistance. I've witnessed remission happen repeatedly, predictably, and safely. And so just always have hope.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes the Diabetes Podcast really a safe place to start your remission journey. We fully acknowledge that we are living in a little bit of a trust recession with just all of the noise on the internet surrounding, hey, get this, try this new supplement to help with your stuff. And our sole focus is just type 2 diabetes remission. Every single episode is framed around what can you do to make this disease better.
Yep. It's really about drawing a line in the sand. Like I said, like you are declaring war on diabetes. You may not be to blame for this war. In fact, I could talk a whole episode on why you're not to blame for this war, but you're absolutely responsible for the outcome of it. And the earlier you act, the easier it is to reverse the damage and to preserve the functioning beta cells that you have and restore their function.
Yeah. So if you've noticed the signs, if you've noticed the fatigue, the thirst, the blurry vision, weight gain, you're just not feeling yourself, take this episode as your signal. Start today. You can change that trajectory.
Absolutely. It's not about managing diabetes. I think we can't say this enough. We are talking about mastering it and going from fear into freedom, which starts by understanding the first symptom not as punishment, this first diagnosis, not as a punishment for something you did wrong, not a shame spiral, but as a declaration of a war against an enemy that you can absolutely win.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you so much for listening to the Diabetes Podcast, and we will talk to you again next week. Thanks for tuning into the Diabetes Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, share it, leave a review, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you've got questions, send them our way. We'd love to feature them in a future episode. Until next time, take courage. You can do this. We can help.